So we've had the big news this morning about Erling Haaland signing a new contract until 2034. That's obviously seems like a massive decision from him and big news for Manchester City. Is it indicated with the 115 situation, but also Haaland how he is happy at Man City and wants to spend the rest of his career or the majority at Man City?
Yeah, look, first of all, clearly it is a massive sign of confidence that the worst of the potential implications of the 115 case will not come to pass. I think it would be very hard to construct a theory as to how this suggests otherwise. So I think you take it as read now that the club believe that they will prevail in the 115 hearing. I think from a footballing side, it's interesting in that they're clearly making Haaland the centerpiece of the whole kind of City global project, for want of a better phrase. He will have ways of leaving. I mean, so whether they're formal exit clauses or not, and there used to be formal exit clauses in the previous contract, which would have allowed him to go for certain set fees. Now, if you read David Ornstein's piece, it suggests that those clauses have gone and are not directly replaced with kind of similar ones. So it's hard to know exactly what that contract looks like, but you should always assume that player can get out of the contract if they want to get out of the contract. In City, anyway, usually, certainly under Pep, I've always had an approach where if a player brings an offer that they perceive to be within their range of what they think that player's worth, then they do allow that player to leave. So, I think that's how you read it. High level of confidence on the short-term stuff. Here for the long term, in terms of the overall project, huge financial commitment. Clearly, this is going to be, I would think, the biggest ever. Well, it will be the biggest ever contract in Premier League history, by a mile. I mean, I think it was a 9.5-year deal. Clearly, it's the gross amount of that contract is going to be the largest ever. And, I think from the other side, clearly a massive sign of commitment from Haaland, who maybe when he signed, people would have perceived him to have been a player who would stay for 2 or 3 years and then go potentially to Real Madrid or elsewhere. And so, I think, as I say, very positive for City fans, obviously, despite what's going on the field.
Absolutely. It looks like Kyle Walker could be set to leave the club. Would that be a big saving on wages for him?
Yeah, you're talking, I mean, he's on probably best part of 10 million quid a year. He's got, I think, 18 months left on the contract. And so I think when you do the maths on it, I think City are trying to get a fee, but it seems to me that it's going to be pretty unlikely to be able to, because unless he's prepared to move to Saudi Arabia, and it seems unclear that he is, I think they're going to have to give him away for free, because he's going to have to, either he's going to take a very big pay cut, probably in half for the next 18 months, or City are effectively going to have to subsidise it by giving him a free transfer. But his level of performance this season, I think, which is probably the key driving force for why he wants to leave, has not been impressive, and therefore I think City, whilst they probably don't want to lose him in this window, I don't think in the grand scheme of things are going to be that disappointed. I think because that saving of 15 million quid on wages, they'll probably be okay with that.
And there was a piece in the Times about Man City and Man United are joining together to back a PFA plan to oppose the Premier League's spending cap from next season. Do you think they could succeed at that? Is that quite a difficult thing to do, given that the Premier League sets the rules, really?
I think it's going to be hard for anchoring to come in anyway. So if you remember what we're doing at the end of the season, the expectation is that PSR finishes. So this current season is the last season of the PSR regime. And then from next season, although we have next season the assessment of this current season under PSR, next season will be about squad cost control, which will replicate in some ways the UEFA system. And then on top of that, they were talking about also applying an anchoring system, which effectively caps the gross spend on wages at a multiple of the prize money of the lowest team. So if the lowest team gets £100 million of prize money, broadcast revenue from Premier League and prize money for finishing position. So if they got 100, the top team couldn't spend more than 500. I think it's just not going to fly, because I think there are big issues with anything that is effectively a salary cap, whether it be hard, like, i.e. you cannot spend more than this, or soft, as in the effect is effectively that there is a salary cap. So I think City and United opposing it, and I don't think they'll be alone, I think is probably not the key point. I think the key point is probably the PFA threatening litigation, because I think that probably would succeed. So my guess is that they will not try and implement anchoring at all, and they'll leave it at the squad cost control, and they'll go from there.
Within that piece as well, it said that the panel on the APT case is set to make the final ruling at the end of this month. When do you think we could hear a final outcome on that case?
Well, it's a little difficult to understand how that might work. So either there's a hearing scheduled for the end of this month, in which case you would imagine that there'd then have to be another delay before we get a decision from that follow-on hearing. It's very unlikely that there's going to be a hearing and they're immediately going to give their decision. So I'm a bit confused by that. The other alternative is that the parties some time ago, maybe in December, sent in written submissions on the outstanding points, and the panel has said that they will give their view at the end of January. But that wouldn't be another hearing, probably. That would just be an issue of a decision in writing. So I don't know, but those are the possibilities. What do I think is most likely? If you go back, the Aston Villa letter to the Premier League. So if you remember, there was a vote in December that City lost. One of the teams supporting them was Aston Villa. Aston Villa said in a letter to all the other teams that was leaked to the press, why don't we just wait, because it's only going to be up to 90 days. And I think 90 days probably would have taken it to the end of January. I can't remember when this letter was sent. It might have been the beginning of November, not the beginning of December. That's the sort of, look, we're going to hit it. It's taken a surprising amount of time for the follow-on stuff, right? So if we've talked a lot about the amount of time it takes to get decisions out of these sorts of hearings, but I would have envisaged that the follow-on stuff on the APT, because it was such an extensive decision from the original hearing, I would have thought the follow-on questions would have been answered in quite a short timescale, but that's obviously not turned out to be the case. But the other thing that's relevant whenever you get these sorts of legal cases or arbitration cases is that the reality that Christmas and New Year does get in the way, because people do, with the best will in the world, people do stop working over that period on things of this nature, and so it just does drag out timescales.